So I'm going to start off, I really want to start off by giving a really heartfelt thank you to the Better Business Bureau for putting on this webinar and putting it on in such short notice. I know that there's a lot going on in the world right now. I know that businesses are faced with a lot of challenges. And we're going to talk about a lot of those challenges today. We're going to give some recommendations on how to overcome some of those challenges. But I really want to thank them for putting this on. Nancy has been great. She's had several meetings with Josh and myself talking about the different challenges that our accredited businesses and all businesses are faced with. And she shared a lot of the feedback that she's received from you folks and asked us to put together some guidance on that. And so, Nancy and the Better Business Bureau, thank you all so much for coordinating this and putting this on together. And we're going to get started in just a minute here. Before we do, though, I do want to go through a couple housekeeping notes just so that everybody is aware and on the same page. All attendees today are in listen-only mode. So there is on the right-hand side of your screen a chat feature, and it looks like we have several people. Sabrina, Jay, Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Good to see you again virtually. Feel free to ask as many questions as you like in the chat feature. As we go through the presentation, both myself and Josh will try to answer those questions if they make sense at certain pieces. But worst case scenario, at the end of today's presentations, we're going to take time to go through a Q&A section and answer any questions that we're able to at the end. Okay, so throughout the presentation, you don't have to wait till the end. Include as many questions as you can in that chat box, and we will reserve them for the end as well. Last but not least, we are recording today's webinar, and so we will put out, I'm actually going to pull it up right now. We will put out a video at the end of this presentation for everyone that's joining, and that is the actual screen recording. So we are going to start recording, and we will get started just now. So again, welcome everybody to today's webinar. It is called How to Manage a Remote Workforce. We're going to start off with some introductions today so that you understand who is presenting today and why you should listen to anything we have to say today. So I'll introduce myself, and then Josh, I'll let you introduce yourself. My name is Rick Porter. I am the president of Cinch I.T. We're a national franchise, but we're located here in Worcester, Massachusetts. And we provide computer support and consulting to businesses. So we were kind of on the forefront of, or the front lines, I guess you would say, when businesses started to work from home for the first time, and they had to utilize their business continuity plans. And we actually had the pleasure to be able to assist new clients who didn't have a business continuity plan, and as they worked to face that challenge of working from home remotely as fast as possible. So we'll talk about some of the technology that they're implementing and some of the strategies they're using today. And then Josh, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Josh Wells. I work for the Cornerstone Group. We are a premier partner of the Predictive Index, and we work very closely with all of our clients to help their businesses align their employees with their strategy. Today, I'm going to share with you all the tips and tricks that have been successful for our clients when dealing with the people issues and this new normal of working remote that we're dealing with today.
Perfect. So let's dive right into the content. So today, what we're going to talk about is we're talking a little bit about the human connection. We're also going to talk about communication in general, some keys to success, and then we'll wrap everything up after that. So Nancy, the president of the BBB, has joined us. I'm going to invite her in as a presenter as well in case she has anything she wants to add at any time. But we're going to continue right into it. And let's start talking about the human connection. So, Josh, like I said, several weeks ago, we worked with business owners to utilize technology at home very quickly. And for a lot of the businesses, I think if they didn't have a good business continuity plan, what they did is they found the fastest solution or the most affordable solution or the easiest to use solution, and not always the right solution. And I think that's true for a lot of businesses, and I think that will continue on. Now, one of the most important pieces that I want to talk about today is how to utilize that technology to better manage our people. Because, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, all we were talking about is here's the technology you should use. And I think for the most part, everybody on this call is already utilizing technology in some form or fashion, whether it's the right one or just the easy to use one. So we don't need to necessarily talk about what type we need to use, but now we really want to shift our conversation is in how do we use that technology in order to get better results and better manage our people. So before we dive into this, what I want to do is put up a quick poll. I want to publish a quick poll, if that's okay. And I just want to get an idea from the participants. What are your biggest struggles? And it should pop up on your screen there. Hopefully everybody saw it. Take a couple minutes to just fill that out. Is your biggest struggle technology? Is it employee schedules and distractions working from home? Is it employee morale? Or is it that work-life balance where you no longer have a 9 to 5? You find yourself doing email at 9 o'clock at night or 6 in the morning. We'll take a couple minutes just to fill out that poll. This information will help Josh and I kind of gauge our conversation as we talk through each one of these pieces. And it's what we're looking at so far is exactly what we're talking about. Technology is not really a major issue for most people already. I think you guys have got most of that figured out. It looks like this is pretty common. We're seeing a lot of work-life balance issues, a lot of schedules and distraction issues. So I'm going to give that just about 10 more seconds, and then I'll end that poll, and we'll talk about some of those things. Distractions being the biggest one. Josh and I were just talking about that right before we started. Yep. We all have distractions. It's a challenge that we're all facing with. 54%. Good. I think Josh is going to be able to share a lot of insight on distractions, schedules, work-life balance. So perfect. It's pretty much exactly what we expected. Thank you, everybody, for taking a couple minutes to fill out that poll. So let's talk about it. How do we take those tools and better manage our people? The first thing I'm going to talk about is the face-to-face interactions. Okay. Virtual meetings are prevalent now. Okay. Again, you're all already conducting these face-to-face meetings, and people are using a variety of tools. Okay. Tools like Microsoft Teams and Zoom are two of the most prevalent sources that we see with business owners. All business owners are usually using one or the other. It's very rare that we run into somebody that's using, Google Hangouts or something like that, though it is a tool that you can use as well. I highly, highly, highly advise that you guys are taking advantage of these tools and you're doing video conferencing, but even more so than you probably would think. So as we talk about how to manage remote employees, virtual meetings are incredibly important. We no longer have that water cooler effect, right? We're not running into each other and being able to have casual conversations about what's going in our home life or our personal lives, and we miss that interaction. I think we've all seen it on social media. There's groups of people. My wife has a wine night, with a couple of her girlfriends where they have a glass of wine together and they chat about the things that they're faced with right now. Human interaction is still incredibly important. These virtual meetings are not just to conduct business, but you can actually engage with your staff as well. You should be having face-to-face meetings, both scheduled and spontaneous, so that you can see how they're doing, right? Josh, I think, is going to talk a lot about, how that conversation should go. It can't just be all business. It has to be personal. I have employees that have families that are sick and they're going through their own struggles. I got people that have kids at home that are pulling on their, pant leg all day long while they're trying to do work. We all have struggles. We need to understand what our employees are going through as well, so that we can be empathetic and compassionate, and so that we can better manage them. So there's a bunch of different tools that you can go through. Very few of you have issues with tools, but I will take a minute just to show everyone an example of how you would host a virtual meeting, because there was one or two people that mentioned tools are an issue, and virtual meetings may or may not be those. But when you create a meeting, this is what a Teams meeting looks like. This is an invite to a Teams meeting. And the truth is Zoom is also a great tool. It looks pretty much exactly the same, right? Same fields, same everything. But this is what it looks like. You come in here, you create a title, you can create a location, which you very rarely will change because everything's virtual. You put in your times and your dates, and you can physically come over and invite anybody you want via email. Now, that person does not have to also have Microsoft Teams. They do not also have to have Zoom. in order to connect with you. They do not have to have a paid subscription or anything like that. In the details section here, here's a pro tip. Include an agenda in this detail. Okay, in this detail, you'll find out when you do this, you also have the ability to make these reoccurring. So if you have employee one-to-ones, or you have a management meeting or a staff meeting or a daily huddle, and it's once, it's every Monday for 15 minutes at a certain time, make it reoccurring, put an agenda on there so that you're able to stick to it. Okay. When you send off an invite, this is an example of what they look like. Now, what it looks like is an Outlook calendar invite, with the exception of you're going to see this join Microsoft Meetings section right down here. All they do is click on that and it will spin up the Microsoft team meeting. And Zoom, again, works exactly the same way. When they do join, they see a screen like this. What we're looking at here is a Teams meeting, and I'll show you what Zoom looks like in just a minute. Okay. And they have a multitude of things they can do here. On Microsoft Teams, they can actually while they're on this call, they can even chat with each other via the chat feature, or you can chat with other people. You have the ability to pull up share files and things like that over here. But these are your main functions right down here. This is your navigation. You have the ability to turn your video on or off, right? There's I had a client actually mentioned to me recently, she wants to do these, but she doesn't want her video camera on. She hasn't had her hair done in a while. So you have the ability to still have an audio communication, a verbal communication. You can shut off your video if you choose to do so. You can also obviously mute yourself. With any of these virtual meetings, you have the ability to share your screen, both on Zoom and Teams. And that's what this button is right here. You're able to share your screen. They can share their screen. It's a really great tool for collaborating. If you're working on a project together, bring it up, talk about it. You can really help. There's a bunch of additional features, but I don't want to dive into all the features today because for the most part, you guys are already using a lot of those features. Screen sharing is a big one we just talked about. Recording meetings. Guys, this is probably, I think, the biggest takeaway for so many people that have never used virtual meetings. I was actually on a podcast recently and I made a prediction. And my prediction is this. When we all go back to work, I think that virtual meetings are still going to have a really strong place in the business world because of this recording feature. Okay, we are able to record these management meetings now. We're able to record vendor meetings and client meetings. And I myself has been corrected many times where I've said, no, I said we were going to do it on Tuesday. And a staff member might say, no, you said Wednesday, Rick. And I said, no, I didn't. And they say, well, here you go. Minute 3:33 is when you say Tuesday. And I stand corrected. I absolutely did. For boards and other groups, it's a great way to get your meeting notes. You can record these things. It will actually automatically transcribe. It's a really great feature. I think people are going to take advantage of this even once we go back into the office for that feature alone. This is what a Zoom meeting looks like. If you host a Zoom meeting, this is an example of what a Zoom meeting looks like. You can bring up all your participants. You get to see their facial expressions. You get to hear their inflections in their voice. It helps you really not misinterpret an email or a text message. And all the functionality is the same. You have the ability to share your screen, chat with them, and really collaborate. So I think that these are the tools that we recommend people use. And I know Zoom, if we haven't got questions so far, we will probably get a lot of questions at the end, and we could talk about the security of both of them. Zoom had a lot of major security vulnerability issues last week, and they've already started to address them. And we could talk about some of that stuff as well. But both platforms are actually improving every single day. Times like these drive innovation. Microsoft Teams, within the last 2 weeks, has got dramatically better. It was already good and it got dramatically better. Zoom has dramatically improved their security so that these tools can be widely adopted. So I think these are two great tools. And I think, Josh, you probably are best to talk about how to best use these tools, how to create that open dialogue. So I'm going to turn it over to you to talk to us a little bit about how to better use them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick. So when we're talking at the Cornerstone Group with our clients, one of the analogies that we've really started to use is this Hart Head and briefcase model that we're talking about. And in order to really drive engagement with any of your employees, it's imperative to understand the whole picture of those employees that you're leading. So the heart here is someone's values, their passions, their interests, and their self-belief. The briefcase is that resume that you've gotten with their education, the knowledge, the skills, and their experience. And then the head is your cognitive and behavioral makeup. And it's very often that we're only taking in one or two of these and not really looking at the entire picture. So I'm going to talk about a few ways where we can really take the entire picture into consideration so that we can understand who these employees are, because it's impossible to drive engagement without really getting the full picture of those people first. You want to move to the next slide.
Absolutely.
So some of these are the best ways that you can tap into the emotional culture of what's going on with your employees. And probably my favorite of those is this non-business one-on-one. And so what you want to do is you want to plan an hour with each of your direct reports and have this be as non-business, non-results related as possible. The first thing that you want to do is dig into the heart, or those interests and the beliefs and the values of that person, and also share some of your own. So the beginning of that can really be starting to ask some questions that you may not have really asked because of the busyness of your business over some time. And you can also get into the briefcase, and you may be thinking, well, if this is a non-business one-on-one, then why are we talking about those resume items and the briefcase at all? And since the interview, you probably haven't actually gotten into a lot of the things that they were talking about and proud of when you were bringing them into the business in the first place. Ask them about how they see their future, what positions within the business they're working towards, what experience they've been adding since they've been on the job, what type of projects would they like to lead, what would they like to add as experience. The important thing to remember with this meeting is that it isn't about the business and the business's interests. It's about this person and this particular employee and their interests. What you're really trying to accomplish here is to build trust. Add to your awareness and your own self-awareness through this meeting so that you can understand your employee and really figure out how you can help drive the engagement with the business from that employee. Another thing that's super important during these times is to share some mental health resources if you have access to them, and make sure that your employees, when they're sitting in their house all day and not having that social interaction that they're used to, make sure that they have access to these things so that they can continue to be as mentally ready for everything that your business is requiring of them. And then something that we've been seeing a lot of success with our clients is to promote physical wellness. Have some contests, have people doing 20 push-ups a day, for example, or trying to get out and do a quick run. Anything that's going to have them kind of, one, interacting with each other, but then two, just promoting that physical wellness at a time when it can be really hard for people to keep that in mind. Share healthy recipes. Maybe you, Rick, you'll be able to share some forums, but they'll be able to share things like that, where they can talk about the healthy foods that they're trying to eat right now, the recipes that they're making, the type of dinners that they're having that are keeping them on pace for staying healthy.
Or not.
And then another thing that another thing we've been doing is promoting neighborhood walks while having these one-to-ones or conference calls, getting them outside and getting some sunshine still. And then lastly, when you're using these tools, it's super important to make sure that you're being available and being accountable as a leader. When we think about being a manager, a lot of times what happens is we fall into a trap of thinking that it's a one-way relationship. We're trying to keep everybody else accountable, make sure that they're always available to us, but we forget to reciprocate that. So when you're trying to be accountable, you have to ask yourself, and I would do this daily, how are you improving yourself? How are you creating a self-awareness in yourself? And how are you using this remote setting that we're in as an advantage for doing things like that? So one of the things that I've been telling my clients to do that have been a real needle mover is to take the time to write down the strengths and weaknesses you feel you have in different managing scenarios, and have those visible to you when you're performing any kind of meeting. So for example, if you know that sometimes you tend to dominate a conversation when you're in these one-on-ones, one of the nice things about being remote is that they can't see the papers that are on your desk anymore when you're sitting across from them and talking to them in a one-on-one scenario. If you can look down and see that it says, "Don't dominate the conversation" on a piece of paper in bold letters right there in front of you, it's going to create an accountability for yourself to be self-aware and to avoid the traps during these situations. So if you could just continue to have that as a reminder when you're talking to your direct reports, it's going to be an incredible tool for you to really open up the conversation between the two of you. And then also to be available. It's not enough to say to a direct report, "Let me know if you need anything." We all have had a manager or a boss at one time or another say that to us. and we didn't actually feel comfortable going to them when the time arose and we needed to go to them. You need to, one, mean it, but two, and maybe more importantly, provide a way to let them easily access you when you're needed. So in our company, we use a tool called Calendly, which is one of our ways that people can grab some space on our calendar and set some time up to them. There's probably a lot of tools that you could speak to, Rick, as well. I don't know if you want to jump in with a couple others or if you just want to talk about it later. But the important thing is, do not act like it's taking you away from something more important. So when they do grab that time on your calendar, you have to actually commit at that point to having that be something important between the two of you. If you have no time available in a day and they still need you, then what other ways can you get them what they need? So these are the type of things that you need to be thinking about. And if you can, thanks. Yeah, and this leads us into this here, which is that sympathy versus empathy. Sometimes when we think we're being empathetic, we're actually being sympathetic in the workplace. Unfortunately, offers of sympathy do not always feel helpful to a distressed worker. And in a time like today, there are a lot of people going through real distress at home and still trying to be productive. Sympathy alone can seem shallow and lacking an emotional feeling. Simply expressing sympathetic sentiments, it doesn't usually make a worker feel better in any way. To the contrary, it can actually make them feel worse. Empathy, in contrast, more deeply acknowledges the existence of a worker's suffering. So, for example, if they're feeling overloaded at work, a sympathetic statement might sound like, "Oh man, you really have a lot on your plate. You can handle this though, it'll get better soon." When you're talking about empathy, it sounds a lot more like, "I can imagine you're feeling stressed about your current workload. Let's work together to see how we can make this feel more manageable." Notice you didn't promise to take things off of their plate. Sometimes a business really does need them to get all these projects done, but you're having empathy and you're helping them feel like they have someone that's working with them to get these projects done. And that can go a long way. Empathy is a real powerful tool to not only create engagement in your company strategy, but personal loyalty to your own leadership. And that's what's super important. And so on this next slide, we have what's the pyramid of professional empathy. And you cannot get to any other parts of this pyramid without building that foundation of self-awareness first. Without real reflection and an understanding of your management style and how that management style is coming across to your team, none of the rest is possible. Once you have that awareness, however, then you can use that empathy and start building trust with the individuals on the team. Once you've begun to build that trust in those relationships, then and only then will you start to see real measurable change in the performance of your team. And then that's when that capstone of culture can be placed, and the culture starts to be a living, breathing part of your team, and not just some words and core values on a piece of paper, but actually starts to be a part of the feeling that you have every time that you're going into work.
Yeah, Josh, I think this is a good one as well. We do, we try to emulate a lot of these things as well. So for me, I try to be self-aware, as a leader here, and I know our entire management team, and we try to acknowledge where our weaknesses are. I'm the type of person that I don't always remember to positively reward people and to say nice things because we're busy, we're going all the time. I'm personally, I'm not the type of person that needs an attaboy or a pat on the back. I'm going to continue every way, but I know that everybody's not like that. So, I have to be self-aware, and then I have to develop those skills when I'm talking with my team. And then when we're working towards that performance and we accomplish what we're looking to do, then we're looking at building culture. I think I told you in a previous call that you and I had, my help desk was overwhelmed with work. They did a phenomenal job. We communicated with them, and they were all dealing with something different, a sick mother, a child that they were trying to take care of as well. And so I think creativity for businesses are important here as well. I think I told you last week, I think it was a Friday, we actually sent individualized little pepperoni pizzas to everybody's house at home while they're working from home. So just try to get creative and still reward people and say thank you and stuff like that. And obviously, it doesn't have to be something like that, but we're trying to build the culture after we do all of those other things. So, I agree, they do build off of each other. So let's talk about communication. So we understand what the types of things we should be saying, but how to communicate, when to communicate, stuff like that. So let's talk about planned communication here, right? So, expectations, I think, are probably the most important part of communicating with your staff. When we were all working together in the same office, in the same environment, it was very simple. This was almost natural, right? You poked your head into everybody's office. You said hello. You said, how you doing? You asked how your weekend was, right? There's little things that just happened out of convenience and ease. And now that we're all working from different locations, we miss that piece, right? Did you honestly reflect to yourself and say, on Monday morning, did you ask everybody at your office how their weekend was, right? There's a good amount of business owners that if they're being honest and they're being self-aware, they'll tell you, no, I didn't. We got right to work. Or the first time I actually talked to somebody was at 9:30 because I was so busy with stuff. So I think setting expectations for yourself, but also setting expectations for your staff on when you're going to communicate, what you're going to be communicating about is important. I do also believe in spontaneous connections with people. I think they go a long way, but I do think it's important to set a schedule, whether that's a daily huddle. So once a day, you're going to have a 15-minute huddle, and people know that. You put it on their calendar, right? They're able to report in whatever your daily huddle looks like. Schedule weekly one-to-ones. If you go with an entire week of not talking to one of your employees, it's an issue. It's an absolute issue. And so having a conversation and scheduling it, right? I'm the type of person that I know I'll get busy, but I don't want to drop the ball there. So I actually schedule myself, call this person and talk to them for 15, 30 minutes. Call this person. I know it sounds a little robotic, but it ensures that no matter what's going on in my life, that I make time to do these things. And then regular newsletters. I think regular newsletters are important. All of those little things that you say, hey, oh, by the way, this happened, and it was company news, right? That you're heating up your lunch in the microwave or making a cup of coffee, that you have those conversations with. All of those little things are missed when we're working remotely. So including all of the things that transpire in the business's world, in individuals' worlds, in a regular newsletter, which I would increase your frequency to at least once a week now, is important. It really helps disseminate the information. And obviously, one-to-ones are incredibly important. I'm going to let you talk about one-to-ones and how you think we should be conducting them and the things we should be talking about.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, you're absolutely right, Rick, that right now when we're moving to this remote workplace, any kind of communication and structure around that communication becomes 10 times more important than it ever was when we had the opportunity to see people face to face on a regular basis. So that expectation stuff that you're talking about is 100% correct. People have to know when that communication is going to be coming nowadays. So as far as the one-to-one goes, which is such a powerful tool for making sure that everybody's staying on track together, one of the most important things is to co-pilot and facilitate and not to be just dictating things. A business, when you really sit down and think about what a business is, it's nothing more than a group of individuals that are all working together towards a common goal. That's it. That's what a business is. From the ground up, all it is a bunch of people working together. And your role as a manager is to manage the engagement and productivity of the team. So what can happen is you can fall into a trap of just being a scorekeeper and writing down the results that are coming and making sure that everybody is just having the right statistics and stats, to use a sports term. What the one-on-one should be is a team effort to hit the goals that you are working towards together, and not just making sure that each of your direct reports are hitting their individual goals. One of the best ways that we've found to get there is to ask investigative questions to confirm the observations that you're having. Your goal in a one-to-one as a manager should be to try to talk 20% of the time in these meetings and have them talking 80% of the time. The best way to accomplish that is through these investigative questions. Questions like this usually start with phrases like, walk me through, or help me understand. This allows you to get the full picture from an employee. So for example, if they're in the middle of a sales process with a client and you're asking about that particular client and how the conversation is going, you can say something along the lines of, help me understand what a conversation looks like with this client. Then shut up. Let them talk.
Yeah,
that's right. And so they start to talk and they say, yeah, I think we've been doing a great job. I'm talking to them about this product that we know they need. But then I also have this other product that I think will be perfect for them. And when I bring that up, I really feel like they're starting to close off. And you say, and this is when, instead of giving your advice, which is the temptation of any manager, what you want to do is just really mirror a statement to draw more out. You're not going to give advice, and you're not even going to try to ask a real question. So all you'll say here is, they close off and then shut up again. And what that's going to do, it's naturally going to make them want to just talk more and explain more about what's going on. So at this point, now they're going to say, well, yeah, they shut off on me. And you know, they've told me before that they're not really too interested in this product, but I can see that there's a need for it. And so then you could say they're not all that interested, and then shut up.
And negotiating tactics.
You got it. Yeah, exactly. And some of you may have seen some of this before, but if you use it in this one-to-one, it's actually extremely, extremely relevant and good, because now you're really getting the entire full picture, and you're not sticking in advice until you've actually gotten everything that's going on. And now you can really help that employee to understand, all right, well, what can we do to make sure that we get to the end goal of getting the business, or completing a project, or whatever the point is of this one-to-one and this part of the one-to-one. You've allowed them to fully tell you everything that's going on. The next thing that's really important in the one-to-one is to create a more well-rounded criteria. So we're going back to that head, the heart, and the briefcase. Make sure that we're not just talking about the results in every one of these one-to-ones, but we're bringing out everything else that might be going on with them. And we're really just trying to make sure that this is a relationship building exercise, as well as a way to stay on track. And then I think one of the most important things that gets missed a lot of times in these one-on-ones is to ask for feedback on yourself. We already showed how key self-awareness can be when you're trying to deal with this management responsibility in a remote workplace. This is a great way to increase your self-awareness, to ask for this candid feedback, and then really consider the information that's being given to you. It's useless if you're just going to get defensive. So you really have to make sure that you get out of that kind of mindset, and you make sure that you're going to listen, and then try to find a way to use the information that's being given to you.
I think we've all heard the adage, you know, I don't want to train my employees just so they leave and they go to one of my competitors. And then you get that question of, well, what if you don't train them and they stay? Yeah. You know, I think in this world, this is applicable to this, right? If your employees are uncomfortable telling you about the challenges and the struggles they're facing, and you're not asking those questions, then it's going to go diagnose. Like, I don't want to ask that question because they might tell me that they can't get the work done from this time to this time because they have too many distractions with kids at home. Well, what if you don't ask that question? Are you going to go on for the next 4 or 5 weeks, potentially, maybe longer, who knows, with the same obstacle and not being able to overcome it? So they're good questions. I think everybody wants to know.
This is one of my favorite slides that we use with our clients a lot. And this is how you should really be thinking about framing your one-to-ones. The point of all of this is to get more discretionary effort out of your employees. And so in order to get them to go from, well, I have to get this done in order to get my paycheck at the end of every week, to I want to do this because this is my work, I take it seriously, and I have a passion about what I'm doing, is to frame these one-to-ones around these 4 things. We found that if you can get them aligned with all 4 of these things, that discretionary effort really goes up exponentially. So 1, you want to make sure that they're aligned with the work that they're actually doing, and that you can ask investigative questions around that to make sure that they are. 2, and this is obviously the biggest controllable for any manager, is to make sure that there is a real alignment between the manager and your people. From there, are they aligned with the rest of the team and the people that they're working with all the time? And then the culture of the business as a whole. And so as a manager, if you're asking investigative questions on each of these 4 things and helping them to get more aligned with each of these 4 things, you're going to start to see out of your people the discretionary effort just start to rise. And suddenly they're going to be asking you for more work. They're going to be telling you things that they can do to go above and beyond. We've seen it day in and day out from clients that have learned how to do this. And then lastly here is the clarity of the expectations and the communication, which you just touched on a little bit, right? The first thing that I think is super important is to build that communication rhythms, and to the point where it becomes familiar. They understand when things are going to be happening when you're speaking. When are we going to get a chance to go over this? How do I get in touch with you so that I know how to report back to you on things? When going from in-office to remote, this communication just becomes extra important. You got to keep them looped in and engaged. And you gave some great examples of that with the daily team huddles and stand-ups, the weekly manager employee one-to-ones, weekly team meetings. Remember to use those agendas and follow-ups with your teams for all meetings so that they can see what something is going to be about and come prepared and use that time efficiently. And then also afterwards, make sure that you're sending out a nice follow-up so everybody has something to refer back to. That weekly newsletter is a great idea to aggregate all this information and keep it on the same page. And then setting clear expectations. I know through all of this, you might be thinking, we're still running a business here. It's vitally important that each employee knows the exact metrics that they're being judged by. So you must be aware, make them aware of any communication that you require to keep track of things on your end. If this is the best practice updates that you need, maybe in your business, you need to know when they're going to be away from the computer. It is your job as the manager to communicate to them what you require. So what do I need to know? How are you going to let me know? And when do I need to know by? Those three things are your job as the manager to make sure they understand. If they don't know those three things, then how are you going to continually get that information? And then when you feel like it's their fault because they're not getting you that information, I promise you, it was probably a miss on your end setting those expectations up front.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great advice. So let's try to sum it up, and then we can get to some questions. I think the keys to success that we're talking about today are have the right tools, make sure they're reliable tools, right? For virtual meetings that we'd mentioned, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, I don't care if it's Google Hangouts or whatever you're comfortable with and your staff is comfortable with, but make sure you have the right tools, right? If you need to share files with each other, things like Microsoft OneDrive, Google Cloud, Dropbox for Business, The Box. On the project management side, there's tons of project management software that you can set up very quickly. Things like Slack, Trello, Asana, Monday.com. They're all really good project management software that you can implement in order to be able to manage larger projects, more complicated projects with your entire staff. So for me, tools, good, reliable tools that everybody can utilize. As you're having those conversations with your people, the tools, should be a part of that conversation. When they talk about the challenges they're faced with, they're, especially at first, they probably have a lot of challenges with technology, of just physically being able to do their job while they're no longer in the office. And that's our responsibility to get them those tools. And then trust. Trust is the next big piece. And Josh, you want to wrap us up on the trust piece?
Yeah, and it's just what do you have to consider in this new normal? So throughout the presentation, we've really harped on awareness, and you got to just be able to really put yourself in someone else's shoes and show that empathy. The schedules for everybody right now are challenging. Parents are sharing the daycare responsibilities. The home life is interconnected with the workday, but people can be productive working remote. There have been a lot of people before this ever happened that were working remote, and businesses had a remote model and they were extremely successful. So what you need to do as a manager is think about the positives of your employees working remote and try to increase those strengths as much as possible.
Absolutely. I think that for a lot of people, if you have employees that are, and I think you're probably going to touch on it here, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but if you have employees that are working from home, this is a real opportunity, and you might be forced into this, to not micromanage them and to just manage them by results. I found, so my bookkeeper, she's phenomenal. She typical kind of 9-to-5 position. Normally, she is, just like you mentioned, she's sharing that daycare responsibility at home now. And so she doesn't work 9-to-5 the entire day. But you know what? She's sending off emails at 9 o'clock at night. I see her online doing stuff at 7 a.m. in the morning, right? So she's still getting phenomenal results. And you have to trust that you have the right people in the right seats and they'll get that done. And I don't mean to steal your thunder on this, but
no, that was a perfect wrap up of what this slide was all about, because honestly, all you gotta make sure that you're not deteriorating any of that trust that you were building up through all these other tools and these common traps, the helicoptering, the micromanaging, the gotchas. I knew you weren't at your desk, you were doing something with your kid building Legos, whatever it is, that just deteriorates that trust. And now without it, you're not going to be able to build the engagement for that discretionary effort that we were talking about earlier. So that's perfect. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. So, in summary, we're going to get to questions in a little bit. We'll leave our contact information up here. If anybody has any questions, if you guys want to connect offline, if you feel more comfortable in that format, Josh's information is up there. My information is up there. We're happy to help in any way possible. Josh and I had a long conversation. Nothing on here is a sales pitch at all today. We just want to provide useful and helpful information to business owners like yourselves. This is the only way we know how to help you. So we want to be able to do that. So please don't be shy to reach out. While we wrap up, if anybody has any questions, go ahead, add them to the chat. We're happy to stay as long as possible to answer all of those questions for you guys. So while you take a couple minutes filling in those questions in the chat box, I also just want to add another thank you to the Better Business Bureau. Nancy and her staff has been phenomenal working, coordinating this for us all. This is such a great resource, a free resource for so many businesses that are out there. Thank you to the BBB for allowing us to put on this content. Thank you for everybody who joined us today. I hope it was valuable for you as well. We will be sending out the recording of today's webinar to all of the attendees. You're welcome to share that video. We got a question. Michelle asked if you can share that video. You absolutely can share that video. Again, it's all about helping business owners that are out there. So whether they were able to attend today's webinar or not, we still want them to have that information. We want them to be able to provide that help in the only way we know how. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Josh, I don't think we have a lot of questions. So I think that means your content was very clear, concise, and in a way that we can all utilize it and put it in place. So Nicole did ask one question. Are there any security considerations with cloud-based file sharing? I would say yes. You want to make sure that you're using the right cloud-based file share solution. So the Dropbox, I mentioned Dropbox as an example. I think that's a perfect example for this one. I would never in a million years probably recommend Dropbox to any of my business clients. I have a small handful of new clients that came to us and they said, hey, can you help us get set up remotely quickly? And so many people on the consumer side use Dropbox that the adoption is very easy. People already know how to use it. I would tell you from a business standpoint, absolutely do not have the standard Dropbox consumer grade to share your files. It's not secure enough. You've seen iCloud get hacked. You've heard Dropbox get hacked before. Dropbox for Business is a different platform, added securities and features. So if you're going to use that platform, utilize the business grade. I'm personally a Microsoft fan. I'm a huge believer in OneDrive. That's a very secure platform. Google Docs can also be very secure. So there are some really good softwares that are out there. I think OneDrive, Dropbox for Business, Google Docs, and also The Box. So The Box was actually designed for compliance and security in mind. There's actually healthcare companies that utilize it. That's what it's focused on. Those are all really great options to be able to share files, but just be careful where you're sharing those. Let's see. I think can two people be in the same file with OneDrive in Office? The answer is absolutely. So every Monday, I have a management meeting with my staff, and we, just like Josh has mentioned in his recommendations, we actually bring up an agenda. It's the same agenda every single week, and it does start off with personal business. You're good, both the good and the bad. What happened with you last week that was really good? What happened? Did you have any issues or any things that you're dealing with on the personal side? We always talk about that first, but we follow an agenda. That agenda is actually stored on OneDrive, which is Microsoft's file share platform. We pull it up and we all can edit it at the same time. So one person might be editing their section while somebody else is editing their section all at the same time. So it's a really good question, Michelle. The tools, Google Docs, same way, multiple people can edit it at the same time. That's what a lot of those collaboration file share softwares were designed for. So you absolutely can.
We've been showing our clients a way to use those in a way for their one-to-ones, where one of the things that we like to have them add is on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing business wise? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing personally? And that allows you to just walk right into that business. If you see them put 2 personally when you're walking into your one-to-one, you can very easily right away say, hey, what's going on at home? And it allows you to just start that conversation in a way that you could be more empathetic right from the get-go. So I think that's a great way to add something to your agenda. I saw Jay here ask, any suggestions on getting more people to use video during meetings? I've had plenty of people keep it off recently. I have 2 suggestions for that, Jay. One is make it mandatory. And then 2, the people that you've noticed aren't using the video, one-to-one with them, ask them why. And the reason for that is they may have a very good reason. There may be something going on in the background of their house that is sensitive that they don't want someone to see on a meeting like that. They may just feel like they look a mess, and if that's the case, that's something that you can talk to them about and make a decision on if you think that's a good enough reason for them not to be on there. But honestly, if you can just show them that you care about the reason that they're not being on video, a lot of times that might be enough for them to find a way to get on video. So I mean, make it mandatory. If someone's still giving you pushback, 100% figure out what the reason behind it is, because it may be a very good reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of bonding with your employees and building that trust too, because trust goes both ways, right? They have to trust you, you have to trust them. If you're not asking any of those questions, you're not showing that you care, and you're not gonna build that trust with them as well. We were actually just talking about it earlier, that I've jumped on multitude of meetings, and I've actually had some women tell me I'm shutting off my camera because it's been a while since I got my hair done. It's a real life challenge that people are faced with. My own son, goodness gracious, my son he's a prima donna when it comes to his hair. He has to do his hair perfectly every day before he leaves. My son actually cut, just like everybody, we've all done this before. He actually cut his bangs this weekend on his own. He hadn't got his hair cut in a while. He was frustrated with it. He cut his hair, right? There's always a reason. If you're going to have a good relationship, you're going to build that culture, you're going to bond with your employees, start those conversations. Sometimes they're difficult conversations, but sometimes they're enlightening conversations.
I feel like I'm going to start looking like Tom Hanks from Castaway myself soon. So I mean, I can understand the nervousness for some people to jump on video nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of distractions going on. I did a webinar yesterday, a live webinar, and I was presenting with someone, and the person's child actually walked into the room and started asking Daddy some questions. And he's in the middle of a webinar, and he funny story. He actually put his headset down and he walked away. He did one of these. It's real world distractions that we're all felt, we're all feeling, we're all going through. I think authenticity goes a really long way. And that's exactly what we talked about when it happened. This is authentic. We're dealing with the same struggles you're all dealing with. Most importantly is have those conversations, continue to utilize the technology that you do have that allows you to work remotely, and allows you to manage your people the best way you can. I think, Josh, we answered all the questions, which is phenomenal. So we will let everybody go. Again, we will send off this recording to everybody that was attending. Thank you so much for everybody that joined us today. I hope you got a lot out of it today. And one last time, thank you very much to Nancy and her team from the Better Business Bureau for putting on the seminar. Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.